Welcome to NIST Special Publication 830, the definitive guide to conducting information security risk assessments. In the next 15 minutes, we'll walk through the complete four-step risk assessment process, preparing for the assessment, conducting it, communicating results, and maintaining the assessment over time. Whether you're in a federal agency or a private organization using the NIST framework, this overview will give you the practical foundation to assess risk effectively. Let's get started. The first step in NIST 830 is preparation. This sets the scope, assumptions, and constraints that will guide the entire assessment. Let's define the core concepts that NIST 830 uses throughout the risk assessment process. A threat source is the origin of a potential security event. NIST 830 classifies threat sources into four categories: adversarial sources like hackers and insiders, accidental sources like human error, structural sources like equipment failure, and environmental sources like natural disasters. Each category requires different assessment techniques. A threat event is a specific scenario describing how a threat source could exploit a vulnerability to cause harm. For example, an adversarial threat source conducting a phishing attack to steal credentials is a threat event. NIST 830 provides extensive tables of representative threat events for each source type. A predisposing condition is a characteristic of the environment that affects whether a threat event will succeed. Examples include outdated software, insufficient training, physical location in a flood zone, or reliance on a single internet provider. These conditions increase or decrease the likelihood of a successful attack. Risk determination is the final step that combines the overall likelihood of a threat event occurring with the magnitude of impact, if it does. NIST 830 provides a risk matrix that maps likelihood and impact to produce risk levels of very low, low, moderate, high, or very high. NIST 830 defines a clear four-step process for conducting risk assessments. Preparation establishes the foundation for the assessment. You define the purpose and scope, identify the assessment approach and methodology, identify assumptions and constraints, and determine the risk model, assessment approach, and analysis approach to be used. This step ensures consistency and repeatability. Conducting the assessment is the core analytical work. You identify threat sources and events, identify vulnerabilities and predisposing conditions, determine the likelihood of threat events occurring, determine the magnitude of impact, and combine these to determine the overall risk level for each scenario. Communication delivers the assessment results to decision-makers in a format they can act on. This includes the risk assessment report with findings and risk levels, recommended risk responses, supporting evidence and assumptions, and any uncertainty or limitations in the analysis that stakeholders should understand. Maintaining the assessment ensures it stays current. You monitor the risk factors identified in the assessment, incorporate new threat intelligence and vulnerability information, update the assessment when significant changes occur, and feed findings back into the organizational risk management strategy. Now let's dive deep into Step 2, the analytical core of the risk assessment, where you identify threats, assess likelihood and impact, and determine risk levels. NIST 830 uses a structured approach to determine the likelihood that a threat event will occur and succeed. Very high likelihood means the adversary is highly motivated and sufficiently capable, with near certainty that they will attempt the attack. Combined with ineffective or absent controls, the threat event is almost certain to succeed. This level demands immediate attention. High likelihood means the adversary is motivated and capable, and it is highly likely they will attempt the attack. Controls exist, but have significant weaknesses that reduce their effectiveness. This level requires priority treatment in the risk response. Moderate likelihood means the adversary has motivation but only moderate capability, making an attempt possible but not certain. Existing controls are moderately effective but have gaps that could be exploited under the right conditions. Low likelihood means the adversary has limited motivation or capability, making an attempt unlikely. Existing controls are mostly effective with only minor gaps. While the risk exists, it is less likely to materialize compared to higher-rated scenarios. Organizations often wonder how NIST 830 and ISO 27005 compare. Here are the key differences and similarities. NIST 800-30 was designed for U.S. federal agencies, but is widely adopted in the private sector. It follows a clear four-step process and provides detailed threat source and event taxonomies out of the box. It integrates tightly with the broader NIST ecosystem, including the Risk Management Framework, Cybersecurity Framework, and 800-53 security controls. ISO 27005 is an international standard used globally across all industries. Its 5-phase cycle offers more flexibility in choosing specific methodologies and risk assessment approaches. It integrates with the ISO ecosystem, including ISO 27001 for ISMS, ISO 27002 for controls, and ISO 31000 for enterprise risk management. Both standards are complementary and can be used together. NIST 800-30 risk assessments integrate into the broader NIST risk management framework at multiple points. In the categorize step, risk assessment helps determine the impact level of the information system. You characterize the system, determine the potential impact of loss for confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and assign a security categorization that drives all subsequent steps. Risk assessment directly informs control selection and tailoring. You select baseline controls based on the security categorization, tailor them to your specific risk context using threat intelligence and organizational factors, and validate that implementation addresses the identified risk scenarios. During assessment and authorization, risk assessment evaluates whether controls are effective enough to reduce risk to an acceptable level. The authorizing official uses the risk assessment results to make the authorization decision, formally accepting the residual risk of system operation. Continuous monitoring maintains the risk assessment over time. You track changes to the system, threat landscape, and organizational environment, detect conditions that trigger reassessment, and update the risk posture as new information becomes available. Let's close with the most important lessons from NIST 800-30. First, NIST 800-30 provides arguably the most detailed and structured risk assessment methodology available. Its clear four-step process, comprehensive threat taxonomies, and integration with the NIST ecosystem make it a powerful tool for any organization serious about risk management. Second, preparation is not a formality. The scope, assumptions, risk model, and analysis approach you choose in step 1 fundamentally shape the entire assessment. Rushing through preparation leads to inconsistent, unreliable results. Third, communication is just as important as analysis. The most thorough risk assessment is worthless if decision-makers cannot understand and act on the results. Present findings in business terms, with clear risk levels, recommended responses, and the assumptions behind your analysis. And fourth, risk assessments are living documents, not one-time exercises. The threat landscape, organizational context, and system environment change constantly. Maintaining your assessment through continuous monitoring ensures it remains relevant and actionable. That wraps up our overview of NIST SP 800-30. In the full Udemy course, you'll get detailed lessons on each step of the risk assessment process, practical templates and worksheets, worked examples using real-world threat scenarios, and guidance on integrating 800-30 with NIST CSF, NIST RMF, and 800-53. Use the course to build professional risk assessment capabilities that drive real security decisions. Thank you for watching. If you found this overview helpful, subscribe to the channel for more security content, and check the description for the link to the full course. See you in the next video.